In this program, we're going to learn how to do some formatting. We'll get everything set up. I'll call it Format Introduction. Specifically, we're going to learn how to use system.out.printf, the F standing for format. And just showing you that args can be turned into anything. I'll just call it turtles this time. We're going to get some things that we can format. So I'll declare some variables, all of the crucial reindeer from the holiday season. We'll give them some scores. And as an integer, we'll give Rudolph some points. And now we'll assign lots of values, trying to get a lot of long decimals, long and short decimals. So that's what I'm doing here. Going to guarantee Cupid has a lot of spots. Dasher is going to be a very long repeating decimal. Donner is going to have a negative score. And we'll give Rudolph a lot of points as an integer. You can use whatever values you want. You just want to try to have a lot of decimals of varying lengths so you can see how this formatting works. So here we go, system.out.printf. And we have lead off with a string coming up with arguments later. The percent sign is going to be a format specifier, and then the letter F is a converter standing for floating. So that's floating decimal. That's what we're going to have with these doubles. And the percent sign again indicates the start of a format specifier. And we're going to put something in that format specifier, and it's going to be score dancer. That will go where you see %F. We'll run the program, and there is dancer's score right in the spot that was occupied or is occupied by %F. There it is. Score dancer goes into that format specifier's place, led off by a % sign. Let's try another one. We'll have two scores show up this time. Dasher's score is, here's a format specifier using a float, taking decimal, and another one using a floating decimal. Again, the % sign indicates the lead off of a format specifier. F is the converter. Well, we're going to have two arguments now, score Dasher and score Prancer. The order will matter. Let's check it out. Ooh, look, it went right at the end of the other one because there was no new line indicator. I'm going to go back to the first one and put \n inside. We could also use %n. That will get you a new line as well. I didn't show that in this program, but you could use %n. And you see Dasher's score, the first argument, goes into the first format specifier, and score Prancer, the second argument, goes into the second format specifier. Let's check it out with an integer. So the record for points is going to be %D. D is for integers. I know what you're thinking. I don't know why either, but it is. So this record's held by Rudolph. And so we need Rudolph's point score to go into the format specifier spot. Again, started by the % sign and finished with the converter D. Let's run it and see how it goes. There it is. The variable points Rudolph went into the place of %D. I'll put a new line indicator at the end. Once again, it could also be %n, which may be a cleaner look because then your full of percent signs. So far we've learned that the percent sign followed by an F is good for floating point decimals. The percent sign followed by a D, good for integers. Well, what if we try to put a double where an integer is supposed to go? Let's see what happens. The Eclipse doesn't seem to mind. But it's bad news when we run the program, because D does not equal java.lang.double. It's for integers, and we cannot put a double where an integer is. That's again trying to go from wide to narrow. Not going to work out. We'll switch that back to points root off. Now, we can put some flags or indicators between the percent sign and the converter. For example, if we want to have a specific number of decimal places. Cupid's got a lot of decimals inside the score, so we'll start first with the string Cupid score and do the percent sign 0.2f. So the 0.2 means we're going to have 2 decimal places. And it should get rounded. And we want score Cupid to go in where the format specifier is. And there it is, rounded to 2 decimal places. Well, let's check it out to 3 decimal places. Again, with 0.3 between the percent sign and the converter F. Worked out all right. Let's go to 5 decimal places and check out that rounding. And there it is. The 0.12345, well, that 5 is rounded up to a 6 because of the number afterwards. We could even have 0. And there Cupid scores 571. Well, what if we changed the number in the tenths place and made that a 9? What would happen then? It is rounded. So if you know how many decimal places you would like, you can put decimal point, whatever number of spaces you would like to have. This could be handy for currency. So we'll deal with how much cash Buddy the Elf has. We'll make him kind of wealthy. Things went well from the movie. And subsequent musical. We'll give ourselves a blank line, and now here comes our string, which will include our format specifier. Buddy has and a $sign, which is part of the string literal part of everything here. And then here comes the format specifier. Here's the percent sign, 0.2. Need to put the F in there. The converter ends the format specifier. We want it to be a floating decimal, and we want 2 decimal places. And I'll put \n to make sure the next thing goes on a new line. Again, percent sign n also works. There it is, with no commas. But we didn't tell that we wanted to have commas in there. If you do want commas, then immediately before the 0.2, we'll put a comma. And now let's see if we get commas to separate things out. Much easier to read. So all those flags, the comma and the 0.2, went between the beginning of the format specifier with the percent sign and the converter, the F. Let's try to line some stuff up. I'm using system.out.printf. You can also use system.out.format. All right. Percent sign, I'll put a 9 to indicate we're going to have 9 spaces reserved for this format specifier. 0.2 because we want 2 decimal places. F because it's floating. \n to make sure the next thing shows up on a new line. Could also use percent sign n. And score dasher. Let's see if this one works out okay. There's 0.67, and it does occupy 9 spaces if you start counting from the left. I'm going to add all the other reindeer and their variables, all of them spaced with 9 spaces reserved for them, and we're all lined up, right justified. Start counting on the left-hand side. There's 9 spaces for everyone. So you can see all the original decimals or the math that created the decimals formatted to 2 spots, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's the 9 spaces reserved for all of our output. Well, let's put Buddy the Elf's amount of cash in there. He has way more decimal places, or way more things than 9, and Java forces it in there, but it doesn't stay lined up. It's my responsibility to make sure that I have enough spaces reserved for all the decimal and integer places I'm going to need. In the case of Buddy the Elf, 9 was not enough. If you want leading zeros, I'll just copy and paste this. Then in front of the 9, we're going to place the number 0. Here we go. All of them will have a 0 in front of the 9. Again, everything will line up right justified, 9 spaces reserved, and zeros in front of everything. Of course, if a negative sign is necessary, it will be there. If you want to have plus and minus signs show up, I didn't put this in the program, you could also put a plus sign in here. Right now, we're going to look at left justifying. What if we want things lined up on the left? I'll copy and paste that stuff. And in front of the 9, I'll place a dash or a minus sign, however you want to look at it. And that will left justify everything. Instead of everything being lined up on the right-hand side, they'll line up on the left-hand side. There's right justified. And here is left justified. And again, 9 spaces reserved for everyone. We can also format putting in strings. So we've seen %F, %D. Now we've got %S. So if we want to put in a score for a specific reindeer as a string, the % is the format specifier. It shows it's starting, and then S is the converter. And maybe we want to put the score after that, so a %.2F, so it will be a floating point issue. So in the first spot, we need to put a string. There's dasher. In the second one, we'll put a double, score dasher. And you can see that things went where they are supposed to go. Formatted to 2 decimal places. Let's check it out for all the reindeer. That's about what you would expect. The string is first, the floating point second, so the order does matter. Let's see what happens if we switch and put the double first and the string second in the arguments. Ruh-roh. The problem came up on the F because that is not equal to a string, and Blitzen is a string. Score Blitzen was able to pop into that string spot as a double, but we couldn't fit a string into the double place. So also look that we could use all variable names. So I've made reindeer name equal Blitzen as a string. Any string can go in that %S spot. If we want to reserve 14 places for the string, similar to what we did with the decimal, we'll put a 14 in right after the % and before the converter, and you'll see everything is right justified, 14 places. We'll go back, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Then the space that followed the word for in our string, just as we expected. If you want to left justify all of that, put a minus sign in front of all of those. And now they're justified on the left. This is one way to format. It works well in the console. We'll learn other ways to format soon.